Thanks so much for clicking play and joining me for the first episode, the very first episode of season 2 of She Got Next. My guest, Maria, she's way cooler than I am. She's the Global Digital Director of SNKRS Platform Marketing. SNKRS is the official Nike app for exclusive sneakers. Let's jump into the conversation.
But I'm here at Nike's New York headquarters, right smack dab in the middle of Midtown.
Nice. Well, like I said, I'm super excited to share details about your story, your journey. And I have to say, I don't know how your name came across my timeline or LinkedIn or something, but I Googled you and I watched a number of your podcasts that were featuring you and some written interviews. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to get Maria on this show. So I'm going to try to do my best and not with all of the notes that I have, not just go, and then you said. So I will preface it with I'm going to try to not do that. But I want to start off by saying, I saw an interview of you that was from 4 years ago.
Wow.
At the time you're at Jordan Brand, and you were talking about this piece of it. A lot of it spoke to me, but this piece of it really hit me recently. You talked about watching a podcast or listening to a podcast, and the guest on the show, or maybe he was the host of the show, talked about risk resilience.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember this at all? If not, I will remind you of it. But is it hitting?
No, yeah, keep going though. Keep going.
In the example on the podcast that you shared, you said that he mentioned he had a mentee. It was his birthday. He went to a bakery, and the bakery's like, "Oh, it's your birthday. Here's a free pastry." And he said, "Can I have one for my mentee?" And the bakery owner or whoever was behind the counter was like, I don't really know if I can do that. But the point of asking is to build up your resilience to getting no's, asking for what you don't necessarily deserve. And it feels less harsh if the answer is no, because you didn't deserve it to begin with. But if you get the yes, if you get that extra pastry, it's a complete bonus. And I have to say, this entire show has been an act of risk resilience for me. The first 20 guests I had back in 2025, and with you today, I didn't know anybody, but I harassed you guys on LinkedIn and Instagram. And I'm glad it didn't deter you from saying yes, that resilience. But it's been huge for me to kind of demonstrate that and look back and say, oh, Maria mentioned this, and I've been doing that. I'm wondering, again, that was 4 years ago. It's ringing a bell to you, but are there ways in which you are practicing that risk resilience in your work today?
Yeah, gosh, that's such a great question. And it immediately rung a bell because it is something that I talk about still. And you used a word that I think is actually really tricky, which is deserve. And especially for us as women, we can be highly critical of what we think we do and do not deserve. So one of the things I also try to practice is not thinking about do I deserve this? Am I worthy of this? It's not an opportunity necessarily to assess that. It's more of an opportunity just to practice asking for what we want and asking for what we need. And the thing that I always try to remind my team about in particular is the worst that somebody can say is no, and then you are exactly where you are today.
Yeah.
And if we're doing our best, and every day is going to look a little different, so every day our best will look a little different, then being exactly where you are is not a bad thing. Obviously, there are extenuating circumstances, and there are times in life when we find ourselves in hard positions, and we certainly want to get out of them. But that's not exactly what we're talking about in this instance, right? This is day to day. How do we push ourselves forward? How do we bet on ourselves? I think that was a big learning that I had at a point in my career, was I was just selling myself short. And then when I stopped doing that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can move across the country. I can apply for these jobs. I can talk to these amazing people that I don't know, but I just wasn't saying yes to those kinds of things.
Well, in thinking about moving forward in 2026 and the journey of saying yes and challenging yourself to just put yourself out there, how are you approaching this new year with that mentality in mind?
I feel like you're in my brain. So usually I'm not a New Year's resolution girly. I have some other practices, but this year I found myself really inspired by friends who are going into this year with a lot of optimism and a lot of intention. And the reason why I said I feel like you're in my brain is one of the things that I've been talking to them about is, for me, this is a year of yes. This is a year of, I'm going to stay out a little past my bedtime. to spend time with the people that I love, to leave myself open to chance, and to not feel like things always have to be a certain way. They don't need to be exactly the way that I want them to be or the way that I envision them to be, but that doesn't make them any less exciting. That doesn't make the opportunity any less important. And I think there is a lot of value in saying meaningful no's when we need to. But like, how much fun is it to just say yes every once in a while if we are in those modes where we're like, oh, I just want to say no and I want to go home and I want to go to bed early, or I don't want to get up early to talk to this person. Like, what if we just said yes? And maybe that person will lead you to your next job. Maybe that person will become your mentor. Maybe that person will just become a friend. Or maybe you'll just have one really good coffee chat that makes your week great. And maybe that's enough.
Yeah, maybe that's enough. I'm not a New Year's resolution girly either, but as I was preparing for this interview, reminding myself of all of the notes, I'm like, why did I peel that out? And I'm like, oh yes, this risk resilience. Another thing that you mentioned, and I already said this, I said, I'm going to try my best not to say another thing you said, but I got to do it. Because the year of the yes for you, it made me think about something you said at the very end of one of these interviews. And that was, I'm going to quote it here. Marketers don't have enough fun. It's shirts and shoes, and we should have fun with shirts and shoes. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what you're talking about. Like, let's just enjoy this. Let's say yes to opportunities. Let's stay up late. Let's get up early, create opportunities for us to have experiences that aren't planned, or really fully enjoy the things that we have planned and be present. Yeah. I'm wondering, with thinking about that also, having fun with shirts and shoes, in what ways are you planning to potentially continue on that path? Shirts and shoes, thinking about what's on your plate in the coming quarter and the coming half year. Where are you going to be infusing some of that fun?
Yeah, I mean, there are big and small ways that I think about doing this. And the reason why I think about marketing needing to be fun in some of these instances is like, look at Marty Supreme as an example. Like, what a masterclass, whether you liked the film or not, what a masterclass in marketing. And so much of that was so fun, so kind of out there, so non-traditional, but it really kind of captivated conversation and got people interested in a film maybe that they wouldn't have otherwise seen. And when I think about the work that I do and my team, there's a couple things. The small things for me are like the way that I show up in meetings, in one-on-one sessions with my team. If somebody's having a really bad day, it's not a time to be like, hey, we should just have some fun. They're like, ma'am, read the room. But what I hope to do is guide them to a place where they can be reminded of the things that they do love about their jobs, the reasons why they come here every single day, and use that as an anchor point and say, okay, now that we know like why we're here, how do we then go and solve this problem that's maybe not actually that fun? And part of the reason too why I said that in the context of shirts and shoes, which is something that I do say 4 or 5 years later, is because there is something about style and sneaker culture and streetwear that is just creative and playful, and it is not that serious. And like, we take our history and our heritage seriously. We take the community really seriously. We take the way that we show up for them really seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. Because when we do, then it's like, yo, people say it all the time. We're not saving lives. It's just shirts and shoes. So how do I think about how I kind of encourage that mindset and mentality with the team? And then, yeah, the goal is that if we as individuals show up in that way, that shows up in the work. And then that shows up for the consumer and their experience.
Yeah, I feel like you can kind of feel the joy of a product when you sense the joy in creating the product and creating it with community in mind, and the feeling that you want them to have when wearing your shoes, wearing the apparel. And I think Nike has been great about being consistent with that, not hitting you over the head with it, but really just kind of showing you, demonstrating through the way in which you all unveil campaigns, who you work with, who the Nike athletes are. This is how we want you to feel, that inner athlete in you. Put this on, and it really kind of changes the way your shoulders react and the feelings that you have. Definitely. And I want to go a little bit deeper into what your job is. And it sounds huge to me. Like we think of marketing, like it's so much fun. How does this feel? But I feel like tell me where I get this wrong.
Okay. Yes.
I think of you having to occupy 2, maybe 3 places simultaneously. There's where the community is, where your customers are currently, what the conversation's like, what are they drawn to, while also thinking, when are we needing to dip? Because the conversation is moving. So now we have to move also to a place of how do we create the next generation, the next iteration, while leading the conversation and listening to what your consumers, what the culture is telling you. So again, it's where you are now, when you need to know when to dip, also creating and leading and listening, those 2 spaces simultaneously. Does it feel accurate as to what a marketer's job is?
Definitely. And I think it comes back to where our conversation started, which is all about risk resilience. Like, as human beings, we're really bad at predicting the future, and we're even worse at predicting how we're going to feel about it. So that means as marketers, we have to place some really intentional bets on what we think is going to happen next. And we have to be okay being wrong and saying like, oh, yep, no, we missed the mark on that one. But there's also a reason why I say intentional risks, because we shouldn't be, I think gut instinct and gut instinct is really important, but it has to be rooted in something more than like your personal preference.
Yeah.
It has to be rooted in what we know about the community and what matters to them, what we know about the consumer and how they behave. And that allows us to take intentional risks and make some bets in places that might feel a little scary. And then, like I said, just acknowledge that not all of them are going to land.
And I think what's important about sneaker culture, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not really a part of sneaker culture.
Okay.
I admire it. I'm like, that sounds really cool. One day I hope to be cool enough to join in. It's very sensitive, right? They feel a certain ownership to it, and respecting that culture. Again, being able to listen and lead at the same time is a challenge for brands. And some brands get it really right. Some brands get it really wrong. And I think there's that walking the tightrope that you all have to do. And even thinking about sneaker culture more broadly, let me go back to this. A quote that you mentioned in one of the interviews I read about you. One of the most beautiful things about sneaker culture is the passion of the community. The community has been evolving, becoming more inclusive, and inviting new people in to share in the love of sneakers. And I imagine, again, like it's a sensitive, and maybe I'm saying it wrong, but it feels sensitive. And like, I feel like they can tell when you're faking it. So there's a point in which you have to appreciate the culture without appropriating the culture, while also inviting new people to diversify the culture and the community around it. And that was like 15 questions in one, Maria. But let's talk about diversifying community for one. I know that's been a passion of yours. Talk to me about particular efforts you've made to diversify that sneaker community within Nike.
Yeah, it is something that I'm personally really passionate about, especially when it comes to women. And obviously, I have a level of bias as someone who identifies as a woman, somebody who has experienced the pink it and shrink it era, which for anybody who isn't familiar is essentially like taking men's shoes, making them in smaller sizes, but doing them exclusively in pink or other traditionally feminine colors. I've been the person who's really wanted something that just doesn't come in my size. I'm a men's 6, women's 7.5. So I'm not even, on the smaller end of the size spectrum. So because of my lived experience, I have a particular passion for building inclusivity for women. There have been a couple of things that we've put some attention and energy into. One that I'm particularly proud of is that for a lot of women, you have to see me to be me. And what that means is seeing yourself reflected in content, in stories, hearing someone who looks like you or identifies in a similar space as you speaking about their experience. And so we put a lot of time and energy into ensuring that we had parity in male protagonists and female protagonists in our content, just getting to that equal playing field, which was tough. I mean, I think what's hard too is that there are more men in the sneaker and streetwear community. So how do you find those voices of women and elevate them and bring them to the forefront when you just have fewer to choose from? It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of like, hey, I'm seeing 4 characters in the story and I'm seeing that you're recommending all men. Next week, hey, I'm seeing there's 2 characters in the story and I'm seeing that they're both men. And I feel very fortunate to work with really thoughtful and empathetic men who are super receptive to that feedback. But it does take that kind of extra work and those extra efforts. So that whole See Me to Be Me initiative was really important to me. And then we've also just done some content and experiences that are by women and for women. We did Jordan Brand's first ever live stream that was hosted by women, interviewing women. It was curated by a woman on my team. So that was really special to us. And I think one of my proudest moments that nobody will remember because it was such a small moment in time is we had Tiana Taylor on Instagram Live. It was the first time Jordan Brand had ever done Instagram Live. And she's talking about giving birth on her bathroom floor. And I'm like, this is it. This is the moment. We've done it. And, you know, like I said, maybe no one will remember that, but I hope someone somewhere saw that and was like, oh, finally, we're having these conversations in these spaces. So those are just a couple of things. But, you know, you mentioned too that the community is, I can't remember the word that you used.
I probably said sensitive, and I don't know if that's the word that makes sense, but they're conscious of how they're being marketed to. So you got to come correct kind of thing, you know?
And that's absolutely true. I also think that at times is kind of rooted from this place of pride. Like, I've been around, I've seen it, I know what's up. Like, you have to work for it in order to be included in this thing. And I think that's true of like any subculture or any niche, right? Anytime you try to market to that group or turn that into a mass consumer experience, you're going to get a lot of pushback. So I also try to remind myself and my team, it's like, yes, there is a lot of value in gatekeeping. How do we gatekeep with inclusivity? How do we help people understand that, like, if you're willing to put in the work, if you really want to learn, if you really want to be a part of this thing, we'll welcome you in. But if you're just here for the resale, if you're just here for like the most hype drop of the year, like, maybe we're not really going to cater to you in the same way as we would to these people who just really genuinely want to be a part of something that they don't yet understand.
Well, I appreciate the efforts you specifically and the folks around you are making to continue this effort of inclusivity, especially for women, because I do think it matters that you are consistent with it. It can't be a drop in the pan. It can't be a campaign over a quarter, over a year. Like, oh, it's the thing we're all talking about now. Let's participate. And then it drops. And I think that type of effort is being echoed through women's sports in general. You're seeing a lot of individual teams, individual athletes and leagues really, and investing eyeballs, investing money, investing platforms, and telling the stories of these athletes in a unique way, in an inviting way. So again, they're expanding who their fans can be, introducing them to this culture and creating in-person experiences that speak to them. And I think Gen Z, I had someone on, Ellen Briggs, who is a data analyst and reporter for Front Office Sports. And we went through all the data from last year, talking about Gen Z women as sports fans and how it is about creating experiences for them. It's not just the availability of a shoe and you want to get online, you want to get on the app, but what's the experience around having that shoe available? Who are we seeing? Can you talk to me a little bit about that idea around Gen Z and kind of adapting based on their needs in marketing? Not just having it or even having it quickly, like Amazon way, but creating experiences and making a long kind of engagement with your customers.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's such a beautiful opportunity when you get to do that. And you can really see and feel the impact. And I'll be honest, it's particularly difficult in the role that I'm in because my role is very digitally focused.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we try to do is, again, create a digital space that feels representative of the real world or of the community. We did something recently that I was super proud of, which is going to sound really simple on the surface. We essentially created a map for all of the like third party or more like boutique sneaker shops that are not Nike doors. So, if you're in LA, it's an Undefeated. If, you're in New York or other cities, it's a Snipe. Like some of these other more like mom and pop type shops. We created a map to help people discover those, because those are the places where people really feel community. Those are the places where you walk in, the manager who's on the floor, maybe you went to school with them, or maybe they're just somebody that you look up to. Those are the real community hubs. So we always try to think about, doing the best we can with what we've got. And with the digital platform, one of the ways in which we're doing that is just encouraging people to go out into the world. Like, put your phone down, go out to these places, talk to these people, create that sense of community and kind of self-start. And we also, to the best of our ability, try to facilitate some of those in-person events and in-person experiences. But I think the point that you made is really real, not only for Gen Z as they experience community, but also Gen Z as they're sort of reinvigorated with physical retail. Yeah. Digital retail is not going away. Like, the internet is not ending, D2C is not doomed. And also, people are kind of getting back to that need to feel and see and touch some of the things, especially when it comes to footwear and apparel. So it's really kind of interesting to see how so many things have come full circle, and how this generation in particular. I mean, another thing to keep in mind is, like, Gen Z, not kids anymore.
Right.
They're grown adults.
We're all getting older here.
Don't say it. But, they're grown adults, and it's beautiful to see a generation of people who are starting to prioritize kind of like lo-fi in real life, whatever that looks like for them.
It's funny. I feel like every generation is kind of trying to do the opposite of the one that was right in front of them, or whoever raised them, right? So, but everything old is new again. Like, everything that you all there. My sister told me about some kids having phones in their bedrooms, like the literal old plastic phones that we used to have, and would have to run in from outside to answer. And if we didn't get there on time, we hope they call back. This is so cute to them.
I love it.
But it is that desire to have, like you said, those in real life experiences, and it to mean more than the quick kind of economy. I think people have gone back to wanting to find meaning in their purchases and their relationships and their relationships around those purchases. And I think, again, Nike has done such a great job, and I know people listening, Nike's not paying me for this, what I love about, like, even thinking about this conversation, I'm being reminded of all the touch points I've had with Nike through my life, remembering some of the women who I looked up to. I played basketball in high school, not very well. I'm only 5'2", but I was a fan.
Too. Okay, shout out to our short girls.
But thinking about how you all have been demonstrative about wanting to be inclusive and it feeling new, but it's also like, when I thought about it, I'm like, nah, y'all have been doing this. Cheryl Swoop's Nike Air Swoops came out in 1995, followed by Rebecca Lobo and Lisa Leslie, Dawn Staley, Cynthia Cooper, Nikki McRae, Shamika Holsclaw, love Shamika, Diana Taurasi, Alana De La Donne. I'm gonna have to go back and say all these all over again. And soon, Sabrina Ionescu, Caitlin Clark's coming soon, and you all have been there. And I think, again, with the culmination of what's happening with women's sports, the evolution and inclusion of so many more women being sports fans and looking to share it and to show it off. I mean, Asia Wilson's campaign, that was an instant heart, right? Everyone felt like what a culturally relevant ad that was. It felt genuine. We could see ourselves in it. And again, Nike is expanding the audience to who they're talking to. And I'm getting hyped even thinking about it right now. Maria, I don't even have a question there. I'm just thinking.
That's great. Listen, let's just take a moment to celebrate. I think it's true. It's so beautiful. And I think sometimes for all of us in our day-to-day lives, we forget all of the things that we have done. And I can't take credit actually for any of that work. So when I say we, I'm talking like everybody else who played a role in those things. But it's really incredible. I mean, I played soccer growing up, and I remember Mia Hamm, Brandy Chastain, and there was this ad. I want to say it was a Gatorade ad where it was Mia Hamm and Michael Jordan. It was anything you can do, I can do better.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. No, you can't. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yes, I can. Had enough?
Let's go.
And I remember being like, yes, I can keep up with the boys. I can play co-ed. And I think, you know, we learn so much in sport that we take into the rest of our lives. And that sort of like mindset and mentality, I think, has been so key in helping me navigate a corporate space. Like, I can do anything they can do, and I can do it better. But yeah, we just learn so many important lessons, and we don't often take a chance to just celebrate the road that gets us there and all of the people who helped us along the way.
Yes, yes. Now, again, I mentioned that I saw the interview of you, read some interviews of you from years ago. One thing that you mentioned while you were working at Jordan Brand is, I'm going to read this quote to you. The Jordan Brand has become so much bigger than the man and is now a symbol of the greatness we see within ourselves. Wearing a pair of Jordans places you among a community of people who want to be the greatest in whatever they do. Oh my gosh, Maria, talk to me.
That was me. Are we sure?
I'm telling you.
Wow.
Now you know I was hunting you down. Please come on this show. That spoke to me. So talk to me about I don't know how you do this, how you work for such an iconic brand, but you also have to build your brand within it and not get swallowed up by the ideas about Jordan Brand. And again, because you've been interviewed, because you've been talking about your ideas around marketing and how to think about things on the ground floor and create community. Again, you're building your own brand by doing those things and the values with which you work and the goals you have for inclusion. But also you've got this big brand that you represent. Talk to me about how you do that, how you've succeeded, potential ways you fail. Like, how do I be me while I'm also part of something so much bigger?
Yeah, slowly, carefully, boldly, quickly, all of the things. Earlier on, I said something about how I learned the lesson of needing to bet on myself. And that was, coming into Jordan Brand and joining Nike was one of those moments where I realized truly how much I had been holding myself back. I'm a small town kid. I'm from rural Missouri. A lot of people don't go to college. A lot of people don't leave my hometown. My parents were so incredibly supportive and also not college educated. And so I kind of came from a place where I had little to no expectations for myself. Again, I had supportive people around me who were like, you can do, I always joke, my dad is an accidental feminist, not because he's like, lobbying for equality, but because he would always tell me, like, you can be a doctor, you can be a scientist, you can do whatever you want. And I didn't really believe that for a long time. And I found myself with this opportunity to join the Jordan Brand and to move to a place where I had never been, except for the interview. And I did that. And then I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, everything now is just playing for extra points.
Oof.
And I thought, the dreams that I had, I've already exceeded. So what do I do except just show up as I am, how I am, what I've learned. I think the best lesson too in one of these moments was remembering, they hired me for a reason. And yes, sometimes the interviewing process is flawed. And yes, some people get jobs maybe that they aren't ready for. But as women, those are not the kind of messages we need to be giving ourselves. Yeah. The messages we need to hear are that we were intentionally selected. If we're working for smart people, we need to trust that they make smart hiring choices. And I think that moment of kind of stepping into that confidence, that moment of saying, this is something I never thought I could do, and now here I am, that was the foundation. But, it was really tough. I was living a place that I had never been. I went from working at a small agency to a really big brand.
The biggest of big brands.
Yeah, it's up there. And I didn't know anybody. So I had to really, really dig deep. And I had some moments where I felt like I just wasn't it. And I had a mentor very early on tell me, you are not crazy. This place is crazy. Because I found myself trying to advocate for change, trying to do things differently. And that's really hard to do in big corporations, especially, you know, at the level that I was at as a woman. And I really needed that kind of support. I think that's a key for us too, is having those people around us who we can have really honest dialogue with, people who will give us feedback, people who remind us when we don't feel like our best, all of the things that we've done to get to that point.
Yeah.
I feel as though I'm not quite answering your question about making my own brand in a big brand, but let me know if we need to dig a little deeper there.
Well, no, I appreciate what you've just shared. And I think you did answer it in a particular way. Like I'm hearing what you're saying, like Jordan Brand exists. The foundation has been built, what they're known for, what we expect from them. That exists. So you're entering this organization knowing that it's going to be hard to change some minds, to move people around as a newbie, but you needed to be consistent in your messaging about diversifying the community, making sure women show up in these campaigns. Your staff is potentially more diverse than it was when you walked in the room, and having people in place who can, remind you of who you are, what you value, so you can be consistent in that space and be known as, this is Maria. Maria, this is what she stands for. And that's the brand you've built within Nike. That's what I heard as your answer.
I think that was much more concise and eloquent. And you know, the other thing I had to learn too is like, how do I adapt to this new space while also continuing to be true to myself? Because there were things I needed to learn how to do differently. There were ways of working that I needed to evolve. There are ways of like communicating and talking that I needed to evolve. So I like really strongly encourage people to explore the balance of staying true to your values and your morals while being open to how you articulate them and how those show up. Because when you're moving through different spaces, you really have to figure out that balance. And it's a hard balance, but always, first and foremost, make sure you're not losing yourself, and also make sure that you can move in the spaces and the rooms that you're in.
Two things kind of come to mind for me. This sounds probably ridiculous. Let me talk it through here.
Probably not.
I was just kind of picturing you walking into Nike offices and iconic posters and shoes and branding all around, and people feeling so amazed by this opportunity to work for such, again, an iconic brand that is so beloved, but managing to stay yourself while also maybe feeling the pressure to fit in. I think of The Devil Wears Prada.
Oh, yeah.
Remember in the movie, like how, like she wanted to kind of just do the work and figure it out. And there are a lot of, challenges around that movie, but she was this pressure from other people in the space to look a certain way. You need to dress this way to feel a part of this community. And I would imagine it's kind of fun being working at Nike and you have access to all of this stuff, but you also have to individualize it in a way so it makes sense for you. Again, I'm like, I think this question sounds crazy, but was there a Devil Wears Prada, or is there a Devil Wears Prada moment where you wear the brands, you wear the shoes, you wear the outfits, but you got to, Maria has to figure out how to Mariaify it and show up that way.
Yeah, no, it can be truly problematic. And this is a statement that goes beyond just Nike and Jordan Brand. Like, we as human beings can really make assessments of someone's ability based on their outward appearance.
Yeah.
And that's really challenging. If you don't look a certain way, if you don't dress a certain way, in times you're not interpreted as being credible. And that's really, really problematic. And again, I think that's where there's an opportunity for all of us to figure out how we show up. And I'm not saying change the way you dress, like be who you are, full stop. This is like, don't take my advice. I went like hardcore into a streetwear look for a while, and I still felt confident. I felt like I was expressing myself. I love style and fashion. It's one of my favorite creative outlets. And now sometimes when I look back at photos from that time, they don't feel quite like as authentically me. Like, oh, I need to present a certain way. I need to be able to walk into rooms and have people kind of interpret who I am and what I bring to the table based on how I dress. And so I did have to explore that a little bit. And now I'm rediscovering my feminine edge and what that looks like and trying to integrate that a bit more into my wardrobe, but doing it because it's fun and it's for me, not because I feel like I need to show up and look a certain way or impress somebody in a certain way. Because at the end of the day, if you have a pair of shoes on, but you don't know anything about them, it's very hollow. And one thing about walking into Jordan Brand, somebody's going to comment on your kicks. Somebody's going to ask you about your kicks. Somebody's got a story about the same ones. And if you can't contribute to that conversation, then it's going to be very clear that you are not being your authentic self. So how do you strike that balance? I don't know if I have the answers, to be honest, but I can tell you, I went hardcore into streetwear. And now I look at that stuff in my closet and I'm like, oh man, yeah, no, I don't wear that. That doesn't feel like me. Honestly, that was like such an important learning for me, even as a marketer, is that sneaker culture and streetwear culture is at its best when people are showing up as themselves. And that means everybody's not wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
That means everybody's got something different on. Everybody's bringing their own flavor and their own story, because this culture really is about experiences and stories. And that community that you get to share with people. So that, I think that's when we're at our best. And that's when I have felt like I'm at my best, is I'm doing it my way, in a way that really feels like how I express myself creatively.
It's so funny. Like when you do that, it kind of, again, changes the way you walk into a room and how people feed up that energy. It's like, she knows herself. Let me sit next to her. I need a little bit of that influence. But before we go, I always ask the same 4 questions in the last 5 minutes of my conversations. And I hope that we can do that today. I'm going to do my best to not interject, because then it ends up being 10 or 15 minutes instead of the 5 that I'm shooting for. You mentioned earlier that you played soccer growing up. I wonder if you could tell me, if you recall an early or a first sports memory, either watching a game, playing a game with you.
Yeah, I mentioned that commercial earlier. That's definitely one of the earlier ones. I mean, the U.S. women's soccer team, Brandi Chastain taking off her jersey, sliding through the grass in her sports bra was another one. And I grew up in a really small town. So, you know, high school sports were a big part of our community. Everybody went to the football games on Friday nights. You know, everybody goes to the games. And I think those early days of just showing up and sharing space with people and kind of having sport as a core part of that really led to my fandom.
What about a first, or I shouldn't say first, what about a movie, a sports movie that is like your go-to, one that you might quote? I see you nodding. There's something coming to your mind.
I remember the Titans. I mean, just the storyline, the messaging, the Denzel Washington, the soundtrack, everything about that film. It's one of my all-time faves. Nice.
I think that's one that's been mentioned a few times, making a big impact, a lasting impact on viewers. Now, I typically ask for people to take this time to kind of shout out a person or people who've really influenced their journey, but I kind of want to do it different for you because, again, on a podcast, I heard you say that you've been influenced and inspired by certain marketers who've helped you along in your journey because they do 3 things a particular way. They prioritize doing what's right over being right. They sought to improve themselves, not prove themselves. And they welcomed feedback and made space for diversity of thought. And thinking of those 3 things, are there particular people now that fit those categories of folks that you think are doing it right and have helped you and supported you on your journey?
Yeah, again, I'm like, are we sure that was me that said that?
I will send you the links.
I believe you. I actually still, I use focus on doing what's right over being right still today with my team. So I think that's so important. Gosh, yeah. I mean, there are so many women in particular, like in my personal life, in my professional life. I think the first one that comes to mind is this woman. She was the chief creative officer at the first agency that I worked at. And I remember she pulled me into her office. I was living in Kansas City, Missouri at the time. She pulled me into her office and she said, I want you to move to New York. And I said, you're crazy. I said, there's no way I could ever do that. And 5 years later, I live in New York, and there's no place on earth that I would rather be. And I think of that moment often, and I think about the people who knew what I was capable of before I could see it for myself. And I just, even though I didn't listen to them, and maybe I should have, I still cherish the effort, and I appreciate the way that they were trying to support me.
You mentioned this. You said this. There was a manager that you had that said she would let you fail, but never fail big. Is that the same person? Different person?
Different person, but another amazing woman who I was so lucky to have early in my career.
The last question I ask everyone is, how are you making space for the next generation of women in the industry? What are some things that you're like, I know I'm doing this. This is important to me. Your whole career sounds like this, but particular things that you want to call out.
Yeah, it is really important to me because of where I'm from and the journey that I have had. And I would not be where I am if I didn't have people who helped me along the way. So because of that, I feel very motivated to try to pay that forward to the best of my ability. Something I'm really passionate about is mentoring. There are a couple of different programs that I actively participate in and have participated in the past. I love doing that kind of work. I think we also have to be really intentional about hiring, and we have to be willing to put in the extra work to bring in the right talent. I had a role open on my team, and I think less than 20% of the applicants were women. It was really important to me that we had a balanced talent pool. So I looked at every single resume, and I made sure that the candidates that we interviewed were both identified as male and female. And I think we need to push ourselves even harder when we think about non-binary folks and making sure that those voices are in the room as well. And so I really encourage everybody to put in the extra effort. Having diverse talent, having non-traditional talent means that you as a manager need to spend more time with them to help shape them, to help develop them, to help grow them. And that's our job. That is my job. And I like to do that as a part of my day job and outside of my day job. But I would really encourage people managers to focus a lot of time and energy on getting the right folks into roles and then helping them be successful in those roles.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you saying yes to managing me through this conversation, saying yes to the risk resilience I'm trying to demonstrate. I'm so grateful again for this conversation and kicking off 2026 in such a positive and just invigorating way. I'm excited for what's coming for you, Maria, and I'm grateful that you talked through the journey with us. And thank you again for watching this on YouTube, listening on Spotify, following along on Instagram and Blue Sky. Until next time.